Sammy Goodman, good to have you here, mate.
Good to be here, brother. Excited.
Mate, we were just talking about it then. You're up in the Central Coast now, originally an Albion Park boy, which is, I say my neck of the woods, not an Albion Park guy, but the Illawarra, in and around those parts. So it is a similar neck of the woods.
We'll count it all the same, mate. It's all
For sure.
all the same. We're a small area, so we've all got to stick together. Unless it's in the local footy, that's the only time we're scrapping with each other. But other than that, all get behind each other, all support each other.
Were you an Albion Park boy, Eagles boy?
Yeah, Eagles, mate. So I started off doing ball boy and all that stuff. I was playing local footy for Albion Park, and just gradually fell into boxing. So that's how it went really.
For the people who are listening and know boxing, they'll know who you are. For those who aren't, number one ranked in the world, WBO and IBF.
Yeah, I was number one with the WBO. The bastards took me down, so they dropped me down a notch after the last shamble with the last fight. So I'm not happy about that. Yeah. So if we can't get it doesn't look like we're going to get the Inoue fight next. I'd like an interim title or something with that Carl James Martin who took my spot. So I'm number one still the IBF. He's number one with the WBO now, and I think I'm top 5 across all the governing bodies. So I'd be probably one of the highest ranked easily in the division. For
sure. So let's talk about that, I guess, disappointing end to the preparations of the last fight. You said Inoue, is it Inoue? Like, I've heard a million different pronunciations for his name.
Doesn't matter. He's got all the belts and all on him. So it's look, he's a great fighter. Like we were scheduled twice to fight him, and the first time it was just I was one of our sparring partners that we had brought out. It was final spar camp, and just I don't know whether it was I'd done a heavy week of sparring prior leading up to that final spar, and I had a little mouse sort of just on the eye, so it might have been a little bit soft or whatever, and it was barely a shot that you thought anything of or whatever, and it just opened up, and it wasn't a massive cut, but it was a cut nonetheless. And this guy's one of the best pound for pound in the world, so we look to reschedule it and to move it to a date that was not too far away where he was going to look at other options, but one that was close enough for me to think I'd be able to recover properly and get back in there and not have a cut. And same thing came to we done no sparring after that original cut. We done no sparring. It was pretty much all drill work. All that work was below the head as well. So like it was it was hitting the bags, the crash mat, and flogging myself in all my conditioning aspects, but the contact side of things was no head contact until we said, I want to be able to see some punches coming back on my head. It's been over a month since someone's tried to punch me in the head. I've got to sort of get that feel for it again before we head to Japan, and I was 10 days out again, and I was about 6 rounds in, and it wasn't full on sparring. It was very it was actually like I was wrestling with a bigger guy for a minute, and then I'd have one guy come in and like shark tanking you pretty much, but like it was theme sparring, nothing heavy, and I was about 6 rounds in, and one of my close teammates, Jason Fawcett, hit me with a right hand, and same thing, nothing. It wasn't a massive shot or a heavy shot, but this time I felt it like almost pop, and it was like shit. I knew straight away that this ain't good. I got straight out the ring, and the cut was 10 times worse than the original cut. So it was like I wouldn't have even got cleared the second time around. The first time we might have been able to glue it and try and protect it. That it still would have come open straight away in the fight, but this one you wouldn't have even got cleared. I ended up getting 14 stitches in my eye there, so I can see it. Can probably see it there. So it's it was a nasty cut. Like I'm still not back into full sparring yet. I've got me clearance, but it's something we'll look to pick up in the next week. So
I want to ask you two things about that, because the interesting thing is, I guess, as a professional athlete, it must be so challenging to time your run right. Like people talk about coming in a peak. I run a bit casually. I'm fucking awful at it, but I run a bit. And people talk about the peak week of a prep, be it for whatever race you're doing, and you're trying to reach peak, taper off, feel like fresh and rested for whether it be your fight or your event. You don't want to undercook yourself.
No.
Because you're going in the biggest fight of your life. But if you overcook yourself, you kind of have to balance that. How do you do that?
Yeah, look, my coach is a very smart man. He structures everything, and look, we're 10 days out from a fight. I think, we never spar the week of or anything like that. So 10 days out is usually, for every camp I've done, has been my last spar. And it was the same process as normal both times, and it's just, the body didn't have enough time the second time around to heal up. And like I said, the first time was just a bit of a freak thing that happened, and it just didn't have enough time to fully heal itself the second time around. And it's it's something like we try and manage, and you go off feel a bit, but like you said, you can't undercook yourself as well. And I think a lot of people, like, we train very, very hard as it is, but that week, the sessions, the intensity is still high, but the volume out of the sessions and the amount of sessions you're doing definitely drops. So you feel that, you come into your own, you're feeling fresh, you're like, I've got so much work under me, like my workload's dropped so much, you start to feel good, even though you're doing your weight cut and you're managing all that sort of stuff. So it's a process, it takes getting used to, but it's look, I've done it a lot of times now as well, so it's something I'm accustomed to. But the last time was just, it was it's one of the craziest experiences I've been through in my career, and it was it was tough at the very start of it. It was very tough, and it's still, even now, like, people, and I never really listen to outside comments and stuff about people saying you're ducking or dodging or whatever. I know what I'm about and know what I want to do. Like, financially, that fight, changed my life. And, already had some of that money spent in property and stuff before that fight happened. And, that's left me now, having to, I've had to be real tight with things and just change a whole way of living, purely for that. So it's, it's had a massive impact on me. And, even if I get another world title shot, it's not going to be anywhere close to the significance of that fight. So, and, mate, that's your opportunity, to cement your legacy for forever. He's a 2-time undisputed world champion. Beating him is, that's a very hard win to top. In the sport altogether, he's one of the best.
I want to jump into all of that in a moment, but the other thing I want to ask you is, when you're going through that moment of realization, fuck, we're 10 days out, I'm cut. What's the conversation between you, your coach, your team, where you're starting to figure out, is this something we can recover from in time? Do we have to pull the pin? Because I can't imagine that's an easy conversation.
It's not, but it's almost like the first time I was adamant, like, it wasn't a big cut, and I was adamant, like, nah, fuck it, we can fight, just glue the fucking thing, and we'll get on with it. And then my coach, he's the voice of reason. I've listened to him since I've been 12 years old, and his word is gospel for me. And he's like, mate, we're not giving a bloke like this the upper hand. And the second time round, like, if you had a look at the card, I knew, like, that fight's just not happening. Like, the second time round, it was just like, there's no way that, mate, you could see into my eye. It was like, you're going there for purely a payday at that point, and even then, you're a big chance of not getting cleared by a doctor. I had, over 100 and something people booked to go to Japan and spend money on a fight. Like, am I going to really go there and get a doctor's stoppage after 2 rounds? And I haven't worked all my life to put myself in this position to go there, cop a payday, and then have to build myself back up. Like, when I get my opportunity, I want to be 100% and ready to go. So we've had to make a few little adjustments now. Like, I'll be forever wearing a full face headgear now with the nose bar, just to give me a bit more of that cover over the head, so to a bit more protection. So little things like that you can do. And it's just you live and you learn, and that's life. It's just my turn to go through a bit of the shit at the moment. So it's a bit of adversity, but I'll bounce back.
It's interesting because I was listening to you on Gary Jubilin's pod, which I think was maybe like December.
Yeah, it was early December. Yeah,
because you were very close to the fight at the time, or the original planned date, which was Chrissy Eve. And Gary sort of prefaces at the start of the show, obviously post-recording, that you've had this cut, it's been pushed back a month. And I was sitting there thinking, knowing what I know now, fuck, I admire him for going, I fully believe that I'm capable of beating this man, and I want to do everything that I can to ensure that I'm in a position to do that. Because firstly, I wouldn't be in the ring to fight an undisputed world champion. But I could imagine if I was in your shoes, the allure of a big payday after, as you said, working for, such a long period of your life from the age of 12 with your coach. And I know even before that for you, you were 8 or 9 when you started boxing, right? It's a huge part of your life to dedicate to something in which Australia is very hard to get financial reward from until you're having those big stage world title fights. It goes underappreciated by a lot of people who are fans of the sport. So when you're making that decision, you have to pivot. Like, how much faith do you have that the opportunity will come back around to fight a guy like Inoue?
You don't know if it's there, so you're betting on yourself again. So look, it's the money I'm not going to get next it's not going to be as much, but it's not going to be, I'm not going to be battling either, so it's no limit. They do their job and they're good to me, always have been. So it's but it's look, that fight might not be there. So then it's on me to build my own brand and to get out there and build my own thing. But look, it's not just getting a piggyback off his name and getting that big money fight. But look, he's still in the division. It's still the fight I want. He's still got all the belts. So I'm still mandatory with the IBF. So it's something we'll definitely be pushing after my next fight. And he's having another voluntary defence, so it's definitely something, I'm going to be pushing my case again. And, you can understand them being hesitant to take the risk again. Like, yeah, I completely do understand it and their part, but look, I've been mandatory it'll be over 2 years by that point, and, still haven't got a shot still haven't had my shot at the world title, and, partly my fault, yes. It is my fault. I'll take responsibility for what did happen in over December and January. But look, I still need my shot, and I don't want to be kept waiting around.
Boxing's an easy sport to fall in love with as a consumer, but as a fighter, I can imagine it's a whole other world. Like, what is it? You hear plenty of stories about world champions who experienced some kind of very real challenge in their early life, be it traumas, missing parent, hard life, hard upbringing, hard environment. You speak so highly of your family and your early years. Like, what is it about boxing that caught your fancy?
I think I love the competition aspect of it. I've always been a kid that's, I've always been a rat bag. I've always been like punching on my cousins or my mates, and like just like from when I was a young age, just interested in like everything was a fight or whatever. Just carrying on with all my cousins, my family and stuff, and that's sort of how I was raised and brought up. But so I was just the competition that battle aspect of it, and the responsibility once you're in there. Like, yes, you got your team and you got everyone with you, but once you're in there, it's all on you. And like, even when we used to play footy, like I still remember like when I was younger, like some of my best games would be in games like we'd lose 10-12 and stuff like that against like, and I'd be walking off the field like happy with how I played, but like you don't get the result. Whereas in boxing, you get the result. That's on you at the end of the day. You don't get the result, that's also on you. When you're winning, everything's a high five, and it's we're a team as well. But when you lose, you got to really look at yourself and go, all right, where did I go wrong here? So I've always enjoyed that aspect, and just having the responsibility is on you at the end of the day.
I'm certainly more of a casual when it comes to sort of any sport fandom, but boxing is a sport that is sometimes challenging to be a casual of because there's so many moving parts, right? So it's hard to keep up with every division and what's happening, but I certainly go through love affairs with watching certain guys and the way they fight, and at the moment I know this will be a mutually agreed love affair, but Dimitri Bivol, like his style and the way he moves.
Mate, absolutely. He's very special. I think very smart, and was very underrated for a long time, and now he's starting to get his just dues, and like he deserves them. He's like those last two fights with Beterbiev are nothing short of incredible. For both men, I think like the performances those guys put on was just absolutely incredible. So they're the sort of fights that you want to be a part of, you want to watch, and it's good. You're starting to see all those big fights, and I think it's probably been a big push from MMA's almost put that pressure on boxing to for a long while you weren't getting all those big fights that everyone was, craving, or they'd happen way too late and stuff like that. So I think it's good, that MMA's put a bit of, pressure on boxing to go, hey, like, you got to step up, you got to make these big fights. And then with all the money coming in from Saudi at the moment, it's too much money for these guys to pass up and other promoters to not work with each other. So
for sure,
it's been real good the last 2 years. I think it's going in the right direction.
Let me ask you, like, your personal opinion on big news in the boxing world. Dana White and Turki Alalshikh decide that they're going to create TKO, promotion company, to do essentially what's been happening over in Riyadh over the last, 2 years, 3 years. We've started to see these mega fights. Like, as a fighter who wants to earn money for yourself and for your future family, and wants to be in a position to provide for people in a sport in which you've spent so much of your life, essentially scraping by, a lot of boxers do until they get their big opportunities. How exciting is something like that?
It's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. It's a bit different with how he took over the MMA world. Like, it wasn't really there wasn't really a platform or anything for it. So it was relatively, unknown at that stage. And whereas boxing, it's got a deep history, man. And like, to get all these people out of all these other promoters out of boxing and get all these other fighters out of contracts as well, it's going to be tricky.
Do you think they'll try to take fighters from promotions though, or do you think they'll just try to work with promoters to create something that's bigger?
Maybe, yeah, it could be that. It could be, that sounds like a more logical way of going about it. But I really wouldn't know the structure of things, how it's going to work, and I know for a fact, like, what some of the champions get paid in UFC compared to what some people draw in boxing, and they're probably not doing as big a numbers as they are in the UFC, and the pay is probably astronomically different. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how that works out as well. And yeah, it's I think until you're in it, you probably couldn't comment too much on it, but it's it's never a bad thing to have more options in the sport, you know. So Dana White's done massive things with the UFC, and look, mate, like everything from like the marketing and how they tell the stories of the fighters, from the prelims to the main event. I think their product's very, very good in the UFC. Like, no one likes sitting around at like boxing events and having to wait an hour after the co-main event for the main event and stuff like that. Whereas the UFC, if there's a knockout in round one, right, get your gloves on, like, you're going out there in 15 minutes, and it's pretty smooth, and it runs really well like that. And I think, yeah, the fans sort of, it just becomes a more enjoyable aspect to sort of watch. It's a really good product, and if they bring that into boxing, I think there's a lot other promoters and stuff can learn from Dana White and how they run a show.
For sure. Well, one thing that I'm interested to ask you, because I don't often get the chance to chat to people who are in your world, is, as a boxer in particular, where there are certain styles and ways in which you can fight. We just mentioned a guy like Bivol, who has a very distinct style. As a young man, when you start and you go into a boxing club and you find your first trainer as an amateur, I can imagine that much of it is you're learning the style in which your coach is teaching you. But is there any point in which you pivot in your career and you say, hey, I think that who I am as a fighter and who I want to be suits this kind of style? And do you have some autonomy over that, or is it very much you're learning off your coach and their style?
I think there's a bit of that aspect about it, but when I first walked into the gym, I was going to be Mike Tyson. that's what I thought. I learnt pretty quick. I'm not going to be Mike Tyson or Roy Jones or any of those blokes. So, look, I had to learn. No, I've got to think. And look, I think you do need to. You can go in with your own ideas and stuff, and I see it a lot of the time when people walk in our gym. Like, we've got a structure that our coach runs, and and principles that you abide by when you fight, and they don't change for any of us in the gym. We're all taught similar things, and then your own flavour gets added onto it. How it comes out and how it will look will be different for different fighters, but those principles should always be taught thoroughly and understood by the boxers. And that's what I think we do really well at our gym. We know our style, we know our strengths and what we need to do to win. And I think a lot of other people, they'll have 10 different fighters and coach them 10 different ways, and in ways sometimes that is good, but then I think a lot of confusion comes over those fighters as well, and it doesn't always translate translate well. So, we've got principles that we stick by, and then, a little bit of your own flavour gets sprinkled on that as well.
What would you say are the foundational principles of your gym?
Look, there's many. There's and if you're not abiding by them, you're getting grilled all the time. So, but like even little simple things when we first cut, like when you're teaching kids, like we get them to focus on, one thing's having their backhand up every time they're throwing a punch, so they're throwing their jab, their right hands on their chin. Always keeping your train tracks, which is the width in your stance. Rotating with each punch and turning your toes and stuff like that. Like it's just little basics and fundamentals and stuff that you learn over time. Our lead hand as well, we're big on that in our gym. Our lead hand's always working and asking questions of our opponent, and that doesn't stop throughout the fight. So little things like that, you'll see all our fighters doing. And but there's many things that we do, and that you'll learn if you come up to complete boxing. But it's he's a very strict coach. If you're not doing what's asked of you, you'll know about it pretty quick, and it's good. You get away with nothing. That's the other thing I love about training up there. You're held accountable for absolutely everything, and if you see someone slipping or whatever, it's they'll know about it pretty quick.
Yeah, there's a pure devotion to the craft at that level where if you don't take it seriously, you'll be found out.
No, absolutely, and you see it with a few of the boys. Like even like you have that they're almost at that point where they've had a few novice fights or whatever, and they've come through that, and then they're at that stage where right, it's starting to get serious. So that training, like, and some believer, they'll keep ripping in, and they'll go that next level, and they'll keep growing, and they'll get better pretty quick. Like we've got a few guys, like one of the guys I'd give a big rap to at the moment in our gym's like Solomon Shepherd. Like, mate, his work rate and his intensity in the gym's second to none. He's helping coach now, but he's only probably been boxing for 4 or 5 years now, and he's starting to get to that elite level in the amateurs and do good things. So, but so I'd say he's a good blueprint for a few of the boys to look at and how he's done it and how he works. So but yeah, other guys as well. They sort of they get to that stage where they all right. You've had 15 fights. You got to fight this guy with 40 or 50 or could be more. And they feel that level, and it's almost, is it going to be too much? And then the training sort of slows. Maybe not even slows down, but it doesn't kick to that next level. And that's what you got to do to compete. You got to be pushing every single day and trying to get better to especially if you're playing a bit of catch up and you haven't done it since you're a kid. You are playing catch up essentially. So you're going to be in the gym more, if not than everyone else. So, but like he's a big a guy in the gym that I think is outstanding. We've got Jackie Newman, who he has boxed since he was a kid, but like the last few years he's getting his dues and starting to make Australian teams, and he's won a few Australian titles now. So guys like that in our gym, they're leading the way.
Mate, I love this topic of conversation. I want to pull on the thread because I think in any walk of life, the closer you are to the sun, be it people who are doing what you want to do at the highest level, really encourages you as a novice and amateur, as someone who's moving up in the ranks, to be thoughtful and deliberate in a high performance mindset. But I guess if you're a younger person who's at a gym and you don't have any pros there, or you don't have anyone who's competing at that level, and you're ready to start fighting, as you said, you might have 10 or 15 amateur fights, come up against some resistance, but not a lot. And then you face that one guy who reminds you that, hey, that's the beautiful thing that everyone says about combat sports is there's always someone who can beat you at a game. May not be your game if you play your game right, but there's always somebody who's just as good as you and is just as skilled. And I find it interesting to think, at what point in your career, like how many amateur fights did you have?
Probably, I would have had close to 100, so I don't know exactly, but it was around 100, and then I turned pro. I wasn't even 19, I don't think, when I turned pro. So I was turning 19 that year. So it was pretty early on. I switched over, but looking back, it was the right decision for me. But yeah, you're right. Like boxing, and I'd say like I haven't competed in any other martial arts or anything, but like it does humble you. If you rock up to the gym and have a bad day, and this is even like goes from the conditioning aspect or or you know, like all that sort of stuff when you're doing your runs, like, you know, everything's about pushing. And if you're gonna rock up to the gym and think you're gonna have an easy day, or you're feeling like shit and can't be asked to do it, you know, there's, you know, 10 other blokes there that are going to make you look like a dog. And that's a big thing. Like, you know, you get there and everyone, you know, not everyone's feeling good by the end of the week. You've been thrashed the whole time, you know, but that's where you got to be on it with your nutrition, your recovery, and do everything right outside of the sport to, you know, to be able to, you know, keep pushing and keep it at that level. But that's the thing I love about our gym. We're all great mates and stuff like that as well. And we all push each other every single day. And, you know, you'll get found out pretty quick if you rock up and you think, I'm gonna have an easy day, or, you know, I'm gonna take it easy today. Like, you can't help it but get there and, you know, start ripping in.
Can you identify like a sliding doors moment, or just any kind of moment in your amateur career where you started to become very deliberate about the fact that you not just wanted to be a pro, but a pro at the highest level, a world champion, and you start to have these aspirations and start to not just have the aspirations, but align your training, your mindset, every element of your life with that goal?
Look, I'd say I was probably a bit of a delusional kid. Like, even after my first Australian title, I was like, everything else is going. Footy, the cricket, like, everything, like, it was just all after that moment. It was all.
How old were you then?
I was about 13. I was 13, 14. And like, from that point on, it was just, you know, everything was going to be drilled towards boxing. You know, I'd rock up to school and, rightly or wrongly, you know, my teachers would be like, what are you going to do after school? And I'm like, hey, I'm going to box. And they're like, you need a plan B. I'm like, nah, I don't. Like, I'm going to make this work. This is going to be how I make a living. And, you know, I'm out here doing it, you know. So it's been good to me, but I've always had that belief, and I've always been, you know, from my family and my coaches, you know, taught to believe that, you know, it's, you know, yeah, you swing big, you know, and, you know, don't be afraid to miss big either, you know. So that's how I've always approached boxing. So I'm going to keep doing that. You know, my goals haven't changed. I still want to be a world champion, and, you know, I'm not going to stop till I get there. I know I'm going to get there.
Mate, I love that mindset and the courage to be, as you said, maybe what some others would describe as delusional, or to be so grounded in your belief of what you're capable of. And it's a quote that I love: crazy and genius are next door neighbours and they borrow each other sugar, right? Like,
100%.
You know, everyone's crazy until they prove their belief to be true.
Done it. And that's the thing. I think some people now look and they start to understand, like, oh, right, it's starting to work. You know, I've started the headline shows, and, you know, now I've got school teachers that, you know, that used to say, oh, come on, like, you need to have a think about a job, and they've come and they've watched me at the entertainment centre, you know, headline shows in my hometown of Wollongong. So, like, stuff like that, that's cool. That they were like little pinch yourself moments. Like, I remember going and watching world title fights there at that stadium, and, you know, even at Kudos, you know, watching Denny Green and Roy Jones, like, all those memories from when I was, like, you know, starting out 10 years old, and, you know, they stick with you. I remember, like I said, I was a delusional kid. Like, always thought I was a lot better than what I really was. And there's definitely moments where, you know, you do get brought back down to earth, but it's you got to always strive to be better. And but, like, I remember going to, like, shows like that, watching Denny Gill at the entertainment centre, and, you know, I remember, like, sitting there and just going, like, one day I'm gonna be doing this. And, you know, last year I'd done it twice, so it was a pretty cool feeling. Like, Kudos, like I said, I watched Denny Green beat Roy Jones there, and I was like, man, like, this is what I want to do with my life. And you know, I ended up fighting there, beating a former world champion. So it was all good memories, and, you know, it's I'm going to continue to make more of them.
I want to ask you something, because I've probably watched more casual UFC fights than I have boxing fights over the years, but I've always been fascinated in the movements behind boxing. So I watch a lot of especially, like, who isn't a massive Eddie Hearn fan?
Yeah,
probably some people in the boxing world that aren't, but I love the way that guy goes about his business, and he's a funny character. Great chat. Yeah. And there's something I love about British banter, right? I just find it brilliant. And, you know, one thing I'll say for the UFC is there's this phenomenon that we've seen occur over the course of the last 5, maybe more years, where you'll see a dominant world champion in their weight class who wins, suffers a close loss, and just never finds their form again. They drop off
massively. I was talking about this the other day with one of the boys about Leon Edwards. Were like, man, like once they drop a belt, like in the UFC, it's almost like there is a big drop, and I can't really put my finger onto why that is. You know, I guess a bit of it as well, like compared to boxing, you know, you might lose a fight and they might give you a bit of an easier touch to come back on, build your confidence back, and you know, boxing's a bit more like that. It's more about, so almost more of an individual business, you know, or like you and your team sort of agree on things. With the UFC, from the outside looking in, it looks like here's a couple names you can fight. They're still going to be, you know, top 5, top 10 ranked fighters, all hungry as ever, and you know, want their shot to be a world champion. They get given a former world champion who's coming off a loss, you know, and you know, it's a really hard fight for him, maybe. Or I think that can be the only thing, that the level of competition is probably so much tighter in the UFC, and that once you're in that top 5, top 10 bracket, and once you drop that title, you're a bit down on confidence or whatever, and you know, there's just someone there ready to take your spot again, and there's not many that bounce back from dropping titles.
Well, it's one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I guess the only example I can think of in boxing as a casual is I was a massive AJ fan, still am. Love the way the guy fights. I think he's a very interesting and admirable human being. When he lost to Andy Ruiz, just hasn't found that same level again. And maybe it's because of the caliber of competition he's faced post that fight, very high. You know, Usyk, right? So it's like you can't judge it too finely. But, you know, I wonder in your position, Sam, like you're 19-0, and, you know, people say, it's very common to hear people say that failure teaches you more than success ever does. When you haven't had failure in the ring as a professional, what do you lean back on to keep hungry, to keep sharp, to continue to learn the lessons you need to in order to keep that 0-0, you know?
Well, you're learning every day in the gym, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, but like, man, there's some spars and stuff you get out and you're humbled completely. Like, there'll be spars where you're sparring 4 different guys over 12 rounds, so they're doing like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and like, mate, you get to the end of it and like, man, it's tough work, and you got to think your way through it and keep, you know, adapting. If I'm having a bad round or, you know, or whatever, like, I've got my coach there absolutely giving it to me. So it's almost you're always learning, finding ways to get better, to adapt and to evolve in training, I think, and that's been a big part of my growth. But I definitely had many setbacks in the amateurs, and like, and taking losses, and I hated losing. Every time it happened, I reckon I cried as an amateur, you know, like every loss, you know, I could remember them all, you know, so they're faces that don't go away, and they haunt you a little bit. But look, it's, you know, you fight it, that's elite level sport as well, and you got to, I think with the AJ case as well, like you said, he fought Usyk, who's, mate, I think is one of the smartest fighters to ever do it. You see what he's done, and who he's beat is just absolutely, mate, what he's done is nothing short of incredible. You know, 2 divisions, and the heavyweight division, he's so undersized for it, and he's getting out there and doing what he's doing, dealing with guys that are so much bigger than him. It's so impressive, like, because you feel the difference when you're going up, you know, weight divisions. You know, for me, that guy's going up, you know, you're talking, you know, 20, 30 pounds. People are having on him, and you know, he's getting out there, and like, he almost bullied Tyson Fury at stages. So it was, and that guy's absolutely, he's a giant. So, but in terms of AJ, I think he's a deep thinker. It seems like, and just you can see he's almost got, I think, a bit confused in how he wants to fight a few times, and you know, but it's also, like I said, it's high level sport, and you're going to take those L's, you know, if you keep competing at that highest level. You know, no one goes on forever and wins everything, you know, so it's, you got to either turn away at some point and give it up and let the next generation come through, or you go on probably a bit too long, and you take those L's, and it's I guarantee he'll be back, and he'll still be having big fights.
For sure. It's so interesting though, right? Like, keeping the mental edge as a competitor, you know, just not too long ago at home, we do this thing, we call it movie roulette.
Yeah.
Where, it's me and my fiance, and then my sister and her partner, and between the four of us all have very different preferences as to what kind of movie we'd like to watch. So we do this thing where this so fucking comical. This is our fun Saturday night. It's you put all these movie names into like a spin wheel.
Yeah, right.
You get to pick two each. You spin, and we just eliminate one by one until last movie standing. And we watched. Can't remember the name of the movie. It'll come to me in a minute. But the story of JJ Braddock.
Yeah, right.
Is it Cinderella Man?
Might be.
I think it is.
I've watched it. Yeah.
Mate,
I've heard of it. Is that the one with Russell Crowe?
Yes. Yeah. And mate, just such a true story and phenomenal. And you see those fighters who maybe they've fallen off, things aren't going their way, a couple of losses, look like things are over and done with, and then to come back from nowhere and to win a world championship, it's just such a fucking inspiring story. But what is it about the mindset of the best, and you've had plenty of time to train amongst these people, to, I'm sure, spar people of a very high caliber, and to, watch and analyse a sport as an athlete who's so deeply rooted in it? What is it about the mindset of those best of the best that you can take and sort of put into your own arsenal and toolbox?
You try and learn off as much as you can off those guys completely, but I think you start to learn everybody's got different ways of going about it, and I don't think there's any right or wrong way in terms of like mindset and their approach. But I think the one thing you can identify with anyone who's done very well, whether it's in sport, in business or whatever, is everyone's an extreme hard worker, and just has that relentless drive to get up and chase after what they're trying to achieve. And I think that's the biggest thing you can sort of identify is, you got to wake up, you got to work hard, and you got to do it a lot and every day. And, you got to take the good with the bad and keep on pushing forward. And I think that's what separates the people who, almost get there or, just fall short, and the people that, they'll take their setbacks and take their licks, and they'll keep pushing forward till they get what they're after. So it's like I said, there's different ways people go about it, different characters, horses for courses, but it's it's just I think you learn your own way a little bit, what works for you, but it's just all, I think a big part is just having that work ethic and that that drive to be the best.
You talk about work ethic, like talk me through what training looks like for you as a professional. Obviously, people can imagine, the boxing montage is hitting the bag, moving around, sparring, pad work, but I'm certain there's a lot of elements to your training. What does that actually look like?
Well, I'll give you a rundown of yesterday, for example. So up at 4 a.m, quick shower, quick little snack to eat, get to the gym. We start at 5. Gym's only down the road, so it's not too bad. But start at 5, do just over an hour of boxing. So that's a lot of our stuff was that morning was, we do a fair bit of our straight punching on a crash mat. So the big crash mats, you actually have to punch through them. So it's really good for straight shots. You start to learn to punch through your target, and that's something we utilise a lot of. And so we mix that in with our bag work, and done that for, like I said, just over an hour in the morning, and then have a quick break, and then we start again at 7 a.m. So we do another mixture of another almost hour of boxing, and then it was about 40 minutes of conditioning. Go back to the gym in the afternoon, and it was another hour of conditioning with another hour and a half of boxing, and then I'd do a walk after dinner. So then you just fit your recovery and all that sort of stuff in between during the day. And but yeah, that was yesterday. So it was like, I think almost 6 hours of training, pretty much.
How many calories you eat?
Fair bit. I eat a fair bit. So I've got a nutritionist I work with, Jack Doherty, a combat dietitian. So he's real good. He just tells me what to have, when to have it, and I just follow the plan. But I don't know how many calories it would be, but it'd be a fair bit. Like
I'm putting some food away for all that training.
100%. I'm doing 5-6 meals a day, so it's good eating, and the weight's starting to fall off. So it's all steadily tracked, and that's something I've really tightened up on, especially the last, I'd say, year and a half, is the nutrition aspect. You know, I've really dialed in on that, and I think that just comes with a bit more maturity as well with it as well, and just sticking to a plan. You know, it's eating for fuel at the end of the day, not flavour. And you know, I actually enjoy what I'm told to cook at the moment as well. So as long as you follow that diligently, and you know, you're not trying to do your own thing with it, you know, it's going to work.
Mate, like strength and conditioning wise, are you lifting weights a couple of days a week or?
So we do some weighted movements, but it's weighted movements with, you know, with movement, you know. So I'm not sitting under a bench press or you know, doing a squat. You know, I'll never be doing that sort of stuff. After boxing, I'll give the cardio machines away, mate. You'll never see me on an assault bike again after boxing or a ski erg. Like they can go. But yeah, all that are like not many compound lifts or like traditional weights. It's all weighted stuff with movement and, you know, being explosive, and it's tailored to boxing. So that's how we run a lot of our conditioning, and then it's heavy cardio as well. Like
how many days a week would you be doing? So you can imagine you're boxing every day, or at least 6 days a week, right?
I'll be fitting in some sort of conditioning most days as well. So it's we'll do 1 to 2 sprint sessions a week, probably another two longer runs.
What's a longer run for you at the moment?
Probably 10 Ks to, you know, sometimes I'll throw in like really long ones, but you know, between, you know, 8 to 15 Ks traditionally, and then, you know, every now and then, like once or twice through camp, I might do like a half marathon or something, like just to
bit of mongrel.
Yeah, just do something different, you know. So if I've got nothing on for the rest of the afternoon or whatever, like Christmas Day this year, like let's just go for a long run. I was like, right, I'm gonna go do a half marathon. I've got nothing to do on Christmas this year. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go for a big run. So I done that Christmas morning. Yeah, just like when I feel like it. But it's nothing really less than 8Ks. And even our sprints, some of our sprint sessions, man, like you're racking up the Ks on them. Like like some of them are 1,500 meter sprints, and you know, you're doing 6 of them or 5 of them, and so it's by the end of it, you're absolutely cooked. You're like, mate, I might as well have done a long run. You're just on the hammer for that long, but yeah, it's good.
I love the conversation around discipline, and to each individual person, discipline looks different, right? One thing that I think is interesting is I've probably labelled myself as a disciplined person over the course of the last couple of years, because I've kept a relative consistency to doing challenging stuff. But you start to notice that your discipline can become a little bit performative, because there's things that come more naturally to some of us than it does to others. And for me in particular, I found getting out for those sprint sessions and those hard interval sessions to come with much more resistance than going out for a typically longer run.
Yeah.
It's kind of flipped on its head the opposite way the last 6 months, which is funny. But if you think of discipline, and I think it's Tyson's definition of doing something you don't particularly love as if you love it.
You love it,
Yeah. What are those things for you that don't come easy, that you really have to employ that kind of discipline?
I think I've always, you know, it's never getting out and training's never been sort of like, there's definitely days where, you know, you wake up and you don't want to do, you know, go and get absolutely flogged in the gym, but, you know, you just got to roll out of bed and do it. You know, it's almost like just not thinking about it and just, you know, being where you're meant to be. But I think the nutrition aspect is something, you know, I've found a lot easier in, like I said, the last year and a half. I've been a lot more dialed in. Probably the first 2 weeks of camp is the hardest, you know, where you're so far out or whatever, and it's just almost like, I'll add this in or whatever. But you know, now it's pretty smooth sailing with that sort of stuff. I think it's just when you know you've got a job to do, I think it's pretty easy to drop everything else. For me, I think it's nothing else really matters at that point. It's I find discipline's probably the hardest to keep when you don't have anything coming up. I think that's when it's almost a struggle, where it's like, well, I can do this, I can do that, or you know, I can eat this, and it's I think that's probably the toughest part about boxing is to try and do the right thing when you don't have anything coming up, because when you do and you've got a fight in front of you and you're at this level, like you got your own goals that drive you, but you also got a bloke that's that's scaring you every time you wake up out of bed, and you want to beat him desperately. So I think that makes it a lot easier to have that sort of that discipline and to have that motivation each day. So it's I think it's the outside of boxing where life's a bit more normal and there's nothing on the horizon for a few weeks where you can get a little distracted with whatever else.
For sure. When you're in camp and you go on to bed at night, like training's done for the day, the noise of the day drowns out, put your head on the pillow, stare up at the ceiling, is it hard to switch your brain off because you're thinking about what's to come?
Sometimes. To be honest, once I go home, I decompress. I'll go walk the dog or whatever, and
that's a great trait.
We chill out a bit, but it's not something that occupies my mind too much. Like I do think about it sometimes, but it's not like I can't get sleep over it, or I'm fighting this guy. I can't, I can't get to bed, or it's a part of the job. It's another job, so it's it doesn't really faze me or keep me up at night. It's just what I've done, and it's what I've always done. So it's it's just life as normal for me.
I listened to Daniel Du Bois recently on High Performance, a podcast, and I was fascinated by his depiction of the day of his fight with AJ. He's talking about his dad hosting like a party with their family and friends at their house. They're chilling out, listening to some music.
Before it?
Literally the day of the fight. Yeah. And the way he so nonchalantly spoke about the lead up to that fight and kind of this tale of, when you've been doing something for so long and it's your job. Yeah. It's just like the goal is to go in and do it. Yeah. And to do it well. But I guess it's different for everyone, as you said, like everyone's got their own way. And it's fascinating that you can exist in a mindset like that before such a big moment.
Yeah, like I said, it's what you just come to know a little bit. But like, even on fight day for me, I like to treat it like most other days or whatever. Go out for like in the mornings. Like every fight day, we'll start with a walk, go out, have something to eat or whatever, get a coffee, and just chill out, have a joke with the boys, and usually like if it's a Wednesday or whatever, there's a couple races on or whatever, so we'll have a punt and have a bit of a bet with the lads. It just keeps everything lighthearted. I don't think you need to have that animosity or that tenseness and that build up the whole day. I think you'll learn that in the amateurs. When you're thinking about it over and over and over way too much, you just do head miles for way too long thinking about it. And there's a time and place to get into that sort of zone, and I think that's right before when you're about to fight. Once you go into that change room, and even then we still have a bit of a laugh and a joke, but when it's time to get serious, it's time to be serious and to focus on what you need to focus on. But it's like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be around people drunk or anything around me or anything like that, but like we'll have a few of the boys around, and we'll go have a bed or go get a feed and stuff like that, and just treat it as a normal day and not build it up into something that's not. It's just a fight, and we fight every day, so it's it's just business as usual.
I like that perspective. What's something that I think it's so easy to throw a blanket over a boxer and imagine the personality, the depiction of who they are, those character traits. But is there much about who you are as a person that would maybe surprise other people to hear?
I don't know, man.
What interests you outside of this?
To be honest, I don't do a whole lot else cause always training. I don't do a whole lot else outside of boxing. When you go back home, you're absolutely wrecked. So you don't get up to too much else. But like when I'm, I like to ride motorbikes when I get a bit of time. I've got a
dirt
bike.
Or street.
I used to ride dirt, but I've got a road bike at the moment. Have done for the last few years, but I barely get out on that anymore. Like that's down home in Wollongong for me, and I'm living on the Central Coast, so I don't get out on that enough. And then like I'll catch up with my mates, having a punt, having a bet, and stuff like that. That's always good fun. And
What are you punting on?
love me horses.
Yeah.
I'm a sicko for the horses. So
Gallop or trot?
Pardon? Nah, not the trotters, not the gallops.
Yeah.
So but like having a bet with the boys and going to local footy and seeing everyone. That's how I grew up, and down the local footy and just a knockabout from Albion Park really. But it's not a whole lot else outside of boxing that I do. So it's
Can I ask you something on that? Like, do you think that changes over time? Like, obviously we evolve as human beings, right? But and I guess that is maybe the challenge for a lot of people in this world where I can't remember whose quote it was, but famous boxer once said, sometimes you don't have the same hunger when you're sleeping in silk pajamas, right? And eventually as you get bigger fights and there's bigger purses attached to those fights and you start to attain a taste for the maybe more luxurious things in life, your life and your routines can look a little bit different. And, for some people, they keep the hunger, others lose it. Like, do you think that things will evolve for you? And
I think that's a big part of it is what you said there was routine and, sticking to that. And that comes from the training, from the diet and just really locking into that stuff, especially when you're in camp. You can't not, if you're not locked into those things, you won't make weight, you won't be performing and you're going to fall short. So, I think I've got enough people around me to, if they saw I was taking shortcuts with those sort of things, they'd let me know. So it's, I've got a real good team around me, real strong people, and you get away with nothing if you're fucking up with something. They're on your back, they're roasting you. It's and like if it's something serious, you'd be getting pulled aside and told pretty quickly if you're getting a bit big for your boots or thinking you're too good to to start to rock up to train and miss stuff. I think I'd be getting pulled aside and someone having a chat with me pretty quick. So it's you just take all the stuff in your stride, and like I said, there's still so much yet I haven't achieved that I want to, and I ain't stopping until I get there. So it's all that stuff's well and good. You want the wealth and all that stuff, all the belts and the notoriety that come with it. But that's what you do it for those sort of accolades. But at the end of the day, you got to work your absolute arse off to get there. And it's one thing to get there; it's another thing to keep it. They all say, and you don't want to just win the belts. You want to keep them and prolong that. So. And be a real champion, and that's something I've always strived to be, and I'm going to keep doing that.
Let me ask, for anyone who's listening to this or watching and doesn't know, we're recording out of Mentored Studios here in Darlinghurst, which is owned by Mark Burris and the crew at Fordham Company, and Mark's had some great fighters on his podcast over the last week or so, the last couple of weeks I should say. Jai Opataya yesterday, Sky Nicholson the week before, at least as they were released. And I heard Sky talk about it on the podcast, another young Aussie prospect who is entering that world of fighting the big fights on the big stage and is so classy about the way she goes about her skill set as a fighter. She was talking about her move from the Gold Coast to the UK, the south of London, I believe, and kind of going over there for more options. I can imagine it's harder in a country with a small population, especially as a female boxer. Yeah. You probably have more sparring partners and more opportunities here as a guy in the world of boxing. But has there ever been the allure of, I know you're very tight with your coach, but you guys going overseas and doing camps over there and exploring that?
We've done it a couple of times and done training over there, got sparring over there. But another thing we've also done, like that's what other people don't see, for the last camp, we brought international sparring partners over from the UK and stuff like that over to our gym. We put them up for weeks on end, so that's all money spent that that goes out the door, and we didn't end up fighting, so it's it's dead money at the end of the day. So it's we spend on our camps, and they're not cheap to run. You're putting people up for numerous amount of weeks. It's never cheap. So it's definitely something we've done a few times, for these bigger fights, and it's something we're going to have to continue to do. And when we get the chances to go over to America and do blocks of training over there, we'll continue to do that. So hopefully, at some stage this year we're going to get over for a sparring block, which has been talked about. We done about, I think, at the start of 2023, I think it was 8 weeks of camp over there. So that was unreal and
Whereabouts?
a real good. So we're based out of LA. Yeah. So just outside of Hollywood. So it was good. It was for that experience as well. Just knowing the level I'm at and just that getting some real high level sparring and just going, all right, like I'm meant to be here. It's it was real reassuring, that trip for me. That the work we are doing is correct. The work I'm putting in, it's actually working. So it was that was massive for me, and it's something we'll want to continue in the future.
Was that your first time in Hollywood?
No, it wasn't. I've been there a few times to America, but it was that was just a long block, and probably the first time we've worked with with real experienced pros at a top level in America. So it was it was a good experience, for not just me but for the whole team. So it was real good, and like I said, want to be back there hopefully this year.
You mentioned earlier what you want next professionally as a fighter, one of those world title opportunities. What do you want for yourself next personally? Like, I know fighting and boxing is such a big part of your life, but is there anything you're excited for as far as personal milestones outside of the sport?
Look, to be honest, it's just to really this year. I really want to win a world title. That's I know it's not the most personal thing. It's a team that's getting me there as well. But that's really, I was so ready to do it last year, and that hasn't changed for me. That's where all my focus is like back where it's back banned. So it's everything I'm doing now is it's drilled towards being that. And personally, like there's a few other things that you might want to tick off in terms of like setting up your future or whatever. But it's that'll all happen when I'm winning these sort of fights. I know that all stems from what I do in the ring. So that's the most important thing for me, is to win these big fights and to continue to grow everything else and secure my future. So that's what I'd say where my head's at. It's still about winning those big fights, and I'm so motivated and ready to be a world champion.
It's a cool perspective, and it's a good point you make. I was listening to something this morning, and they were saying that if you had two lines and one huge queue of people is lining up for the stand that says how to make money, and then the second stand next to it with a line of very few people says how to provide value, and the paradox is, in providing value to people, you end up making more money.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it's a great mindset you have, that in going about your business and doing your job, which is to win fights, you ultimately feed every other part of your life.
That's gonna, that's where everything in the making money and acquiring assets, that all stems from what I do in the ring. Everything I've already got through, like financially is through boxing. So it's all those achievements and stuff is because of boxing, and I just want to keep on that trajectory, and keep acquiring things. But to do that, I gotta work hard, and I gotta keep winning fights. You don't win fights, you're not gonna get those things, and you're not gonna get that reward. So it's that's something I've always known. I think a lot of people in the sport, you can see at points they get obsessed with the stuff outside the ring or the attention they might get, and it's that almost becomes a priority at some stage for a lot of people. And I understand a personal brand and having all those things, they are very important. It's probably something I've got to build on myself a lot as well. But I know that first and foremost, the biggest thing is you show up and you win, and that's never going to change for me.
For sure. I guess in the Central Coast, you're not exactly in the spotlight, are you? So
no, it's a bit quieter. It's how I like it, man. It's too busy around here for me. It's too much going on.
Mate, I feel that. Sometimes I come up here on the train most times now, because you were very lucky this morning. You got rockstar parking, but you come up here and it's so busy and it's so chaotic, and you can appreciate it in moments. But I'm like, I don't know if I could live up here every day.
No way, man. Like if if I had to be stuck in traffic every day of the week, man, I'd be pulling over trying to kill people. It's does me head in. Like, I don't mind a long drive and being on the road, but like going through Sydney and just stop start, that does my head in. So it's it's just too much, man, going on in Sydney. Like, I like the coast. I like being down home in Wollongong, where there's, you're never bored. You always got something to do or whatever. But it's just not as hectic as up here. It's just it's just way too busy, way too many people. It's just too much going on.
For sure. What are some of the fights that, as a fan, not as a fighter, that you're looking forward to over the course of the next couple months?
I think the card in New York's going to be unreal with Rowley and Garcia, Haney, and like all the Haney's on it, Teofimo's on it, like all the the big fights at 140 are.
So these guys are one division heavier than you, right? Or two?
No. They're a few. They're 140. What's that, junior welter? That'd be 4 or 5.
What are you? Is it you bantam?
Super bantam.
Super bantam. Fuck, this is where boxing loses.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's so many divisions. And it's a hard one to track in boxing. That's where, like, if I understand what the TKO thing's about, and almost having one champion, which everyone wants. It's the way to do it, and the way to simplify the sport. You talk to people and they can't know this champion, that champion. It does get too much, But that's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. But it also, I think it does allow for, you look at that division now. There's so many people with their claim to be the best, and so you get that animosity and that it's a good lead into some of those fights.
The mystery adds to the romance, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It does. It's a mad old sport, boxing. It's just it is the Wild West. You hear about it. It's not, like I said, it's not like the UFC, where the UFC is a smooth system. It's run beautifully, but like the champions, it's pretty crystal clear for everyone to see. Whereas boxing, man, it's just absolute chaos. But it makes it there's a bit of drama in it, so it makes it fun at times, but it can also be super frustrating when you're not getting those fights as well.
Let me ask you a little conspiracy question here, which is a bit left of field, but you see in movies and you hear these stories that I'm sure have a little bit of Hollywood salt and pepper added, but you hear these stories of these, I guess, behind closed doors fights between champions and very talented boxers for private audiences. And I can imagine almost, in places like Saudi where there's a lot of money, these things have happened. Have you ever heard any stories of this stuff?
I haven't personally. I remember a few years ago there was talks of like AJ and Fury maybe fighting in like some like Saudi wanted it pretty much like any like
at his fucking
backyard
40th birthday party or something.
Yeah, like with just him and his mates watching, they were gonna get like 20 million each or something. I'm like, fuck, like that's insane. But like, you don't think it went ahead, but like you hear stuff like that all the time and whatnot. But I haven't heard of like something serious like that happening. You just hear of like, oh, he wanted, like the AJ Fury thing. But if it does happen, man, that's pretty wild. I'd throw me ringing the hat for a Saudi sparring session for sure. So for sure. Yeah, it's mad, man. Like, especially what the money they're throwing around in sport now, not just boxing's. It's incredible, man. It's changing the landscape, not just boxing, but I think sport in general. Some of the look what they've done with the Saudi league in the soccer and the golf as well.
Sure.
It's changing the game. So
as an athlete, you got to think about it. You
massively,
have such a short window.
You don't do it forever. So you always got to be aware of the financial side of sport, and like boxing is a business at the end of the day, and you approach it as such. If you're not there to, you are there to win world titles and that, but you are there to make money as well, and to provide for your family and secure your future. And if you're not in it for that sort of stuff as well, you're silly. You're going to miss out on opportunities. So I'm well aware of that, but I've been lucky. I've got a good team around me as well, and they are doing the right thing for me and getting me those good opportunities.
Do you want to have a family?
family. Yeah, one day. Like, I don't have a missus or anything at the moment, so it's not something I think about.
First piece of the puzzle to come.
Yeah, exactly right. So I was no plans or anything like that at the moment. But like it's I'm busy, man, at the moment. Like I think almost for me, to have that sort of stuff at the minutes, it's not too fair on anyone else. I've got my priorities, and that's all. My time and all my effort at the moment goes to the gym. So it's not really something I think about, or I'll take it as it comes, and when it comes, great. But yeah. At the moment, that's taking a back seat.
Yeah, fair enough.
Be the shit uncle at the moment. That's what I do. So all my mates having kids, and I'll go and stir them up for an hour. It's good, see them, and then I get to piss off and leave them with a mess.
For sure. Man, when can we expect to hear an announcement of next fight? Is there some kind of projected hope for that, or
very soon? Okay. So I'll be back out pretty shortly, and yeah, hopefully we've got everything confirmed in the next few weeks. So yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very eager. It's one of the longest periods I've had out the ring probably since COVID, and I'm just itching, man. I'm itching to get back in there, do what I do, and it's yeah. I just want the big fights again, and yeah, that's what I'm chasing. World titles this year. It's all the same. I want that big fight, and it's whoever I've got to fight to get back there, I'll do it. Let's run it. Let's do it.
The mission's clear. I'm excited for you, mate. It's really fun to sit here and have this chat and, enter in and ask questions about a world that I certainly won't be experiencing anytime soon. So really appreciate your time and you coming out of your way.
Thanks for having me on, brother. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers, bro.